Good morning. We want to welcome you to our official first oral history interview for the Blanco Library. We're sitting here on February the 8th, and I'm Martha Hurt, and I'm here with Willard Gibbons. And Willard doesn't know this, but with each interview I do, I like to give a title, a classification to the person. And what I came up with is Willard Gibbons is the man behind the lens.
I like that.
Because we always see Willard with the camera and kind of see the back of his head. Good morning, Willard.
Good morning, Martha.
How are you?
I am doing fine this morning.
Thank you for doing the interview.
I think I'm going to enjoy this.
I think you will. Willard, where were you born at?
I was born on February the 15th, 1944, in the old courthouse down here, which obviously was a hospital at the time. And I was adopted at birth.
Really?
Or shortly thereafter.
Uh-huh.
I don't have a memory of that.
I would think not.
By Willard and Annabelle Gibbons.
Those were your parents?
Yes.
Your adopted parents, huh?
Adopted parents. And at that time, Pop was fighting World War II in the Solomon Islands. He was not here. So for about a year and a half, I didn't know him at all because he wasn't around. So I started out by my uncle Warren, who lived across the road over here from us. I started calling him Daddy.
Uh-oh.
And so when my daddy got home, I didn't know him, so I wasn't real comfortable, evidently. And I don't remember this, but he told me this.
But you've heard about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time for me to become friends with him.
Right.
And I asked Pop, after I'd grown up, he never did spank me. And I asked him why. And he said because that was why, because when he came home, I was calling another man Daddy, and so he didn't want to cause me to not like him.
Oh, that's sweet. That's precious.
Yeah.
Where we're at this morning is your studio.
Correct.
Which we'll get into what Willard does in his studio in a moment, but where the land here, is this what you would call the old home place for your parents?
This is part of the old home place of my mother's family.
Okay, and what was the family name?
It was Val and Annabelle Smith.
Smith, okay.
She was, mother's mother was a trainer originally.
And it's that is a very known name in Blanco,
yes.
Trainer.
And she married a Smith, and they bought this land. And Mother was the youngest of the batch. They had 9 or 10 kids.
Wow.
But typical family, I think, of that time period.
Yeah.
That people did have lots of kids.
Yeah.
And Mother was the youngest, and my Uncle Carroll Smith was the next to the youngest. But he ended up getting all the land on this side of Trainer West Road, and all the land at the old home place.
Now, I wanted to ask you, if your memory serves me, you do have a brother and a sister?
Yes, I've actually got 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay, and they were adopted?
Yes, they were adopted, and that was back in
What is your earliest memory of this place?
The furthest back, I think, is we used to live in what we call the little house down here, and that was the original house Pop built. And he was working on the bigger house, what we call the big house. I can remember living there, and it's a two-roomed building, and so the kitchen and dining area was all one place, and the bedroom and bathroom and everything was all in the other room. When I was a kid, Pop and would come home at night, and in the summertime, instead of taking a bath or a shower, we'd get a towel and a wash rag and soap and go down to the river. And we'd get in these holes, and at that time we called them duck ponds. We thought it had something to do with ducks. And so we weren't aware that there were dinosaur tracks in the riverbed. Later on, of course, we found out that they were dinosaur tracks and that we used to bathe in dinosaur tracks.
In the dinosaur tracks?
Yes.
Wow.
So,
not many people can say they've done that.
No.
Do you, now, and you live here?
Yes.
This is home.
Yes.
Where did you go to school at?
I went to school at, you're speaking of college, I assume.
No, I'm talking,
Went to
sure it is.
school all 12 years in Blanco.
Do you have one good memory of school?
I'd say the majority of my memories of school were good. It was, I think, a fun time in my life.
What did you enjoy doing? Let's say, were you a football player?
I was. I did mostly all of that stuff. I think, most kids want to make their daddies happy, and so that was part of why I did it. But up until my two brothers and sisters were adopted, I was an only child, and so I had to kind of make do with entertainment on my own. And a lot of that was bouncing a ball off of the house wall or something, just back and forth. And so I did a lot of eye-hand coordination type stuff when I was real young, because I was here by myself, essentially.
Right.
And so I think that played a role in my ability to do things sports-wise whenever I got into school. So I participated in football from as early as you can until I graduated, essentially. And even after then, we had what we called old-timers football games, where we would go in and play the varsity high school teams. And so I actually played against a lot of people that I kind of admired as a kid.
Any names that stand out?
I could name quite a few.
Just one or two.
Vol Smith.
Yeah.
Peanut Jones.
Peanut. That's just, and his property would have been just up the road. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
James Calhoun.
Yes, I've heard the name.
There was quite a few of them that I watched play that I got to play against in the old-timers game type thing.
What position did you play?
I played, throughout my career, I played several positions. I started out as a guard. I then moved to tackle. I then moved to end. I then moved to halfback. I then moved back to the end position and finished my careers as an end.
Did you want to go to college?
I wasn't real enamored with college, but I knew that my parents wanted me to go, and I knew that they had provided some money for me to go, and so I went.
Where did you go to?
I went to Southwest Texas State Teachers College, now called
Texas State.
Yes.
Yeah, well, none of us are.
It's a lot shorter.
Yeah.
But this was back in the LBJ days almost, or a little after LBJ. But I actually went down there, and that's where I became an expert at shooting pool. They Jimmy Karras, who is a champion pool shooter.
Did you beat him?
I know. Not even close. And another, a better known one was Willie Moscone.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you find your way into that, playing against people like that?
I spent almost all my time at college at the student union playing pool.
Oh, okay.
So I figured out, and it didn't take long to figure out, that the first 2 years of college was just a repeat of high school. It's the same stuff. They didn't teach you anything new.
That's pretty
And
true.
so I didn't even buy books. I didn't go to class. And I still managed to pass some courses. I also found out my junior year things changed.
Yeah.
You had to study and work at passing classes at that time. And luckily or unluckily, I got a letter from Uncle Sam saying,
Greetings.
you know, we want you to come join us. And so that was pretty much the end of my college career. So I had a couple of years of college.
On your belt.
Of which I learned how to shoot pool.
So now you got your draft notice and off you went?
Yes, they told me to report to San Antonio for a physical, and that's all they said. And so I thought, well, I'll go down there and get a physical and then come back here and then they'll tell me to report somewhere. Well, I went down there for a physical. This was during the Vietnam era when they needed bodies badly.
What year was this, Willard?
1965.
Okay.
And so I went to San Antonio, and there was people there with casts on their arms and legs, and a bunch of them trying to get out of being drafted.
Yeah, of going over there.
It didn't make any difference. They drafted everybody.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, they put us on a bus and drove us to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training.
Just
So we
like
got
that.
no break in between our passing the physical, you know, going home and then going somewhere. We went straight from San Antonio to basic training.
So when you went to get your physical, were your parents like, I mean, there wasn't like this by parents or it's like,
That's essentially what it was. When we finished the physical, I went out and my daddy was there and I told him, they're putting me on a bus. They didn't say where we're going. But they said to tell y'all that you won't be needed anymore.
you won't be needed anymore.
Right.
Wow.
That they're going to take care of me from now on.
Oh, I bet they did. Uh-huh.
And we actually raised our hand in the deal and swore that we would defend the nation or whatever it is that you say.
Were you scared?
So I was a member of the Army by the time I saw my dad when we came out of the building.
By doing that moment where you're giving the pledge to defend, were you scared?
I was not. I wasn't smart enough to be scared, I guess. And also, whenever they said repeat after me, I raised my hand, but I didn't repeat. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not in the Army.
Wow.
I didn't say anything. And I noticed there was a lot of people around me that didn't take the pledge either. But again, it didn't make no difference. You know, you could have been on your deathbed and you were going in there.
You were going. How hard was basic training?
Basic training physically wasn't that hard, but it was kind of a mental task.
Yeah.
They really stayed after you mentally for the whole period. And they gave us a break after the thing, which was nice, before they shipped us out to AIT.
Which is?
Advanced military training, whatever that means.
So you're not overseas yet?
No, they sent me to South Carolina for advanced military training, AIT,
And
infantry training.
not, I would gather not everybody went to advanced military training, did they?
I don't know. You know, there were just a few of the guys that I knew in basic training that went to this advanced training. So
And
I
how
don't know
long
what they
was that?
did with the rest of the folks, but
I had a feeling they kind of maybe went on over.
I think that may have been, I don't know. I do know that
What was
my memory of the advanced military training, or infantry training, advanced infantry training, I don't have, I have virtually no memory of that at all.
Really?
So it must not have been very exciting. I do know it was cold. I do know that the barracks there had holes in the walls. At the time I smoked. You could try to light a cigarette. If you struck a match, sometimes the wind's blowing so hard in the barracks it would put the match out.
They put a lot of money into the barracks. Oh.
And so it was an experience, but I don't even recall what we did the whole time I was there. And I remember coming back here from there and just going back. And at the end of it, I do remember that they had orders for everybody. And everybody in my class, they started out from alphabetically.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say the beginning, the first person went to Vietnam. The second person went somewhere else.
Really?
It was every other person went to Vietnam. And so the guy I was standing next to here, we went to basic training together.
Right.
He went to Vietnam and I went to Europe. I didn't cheer or anything, but I thought, you know, I kind of dodged a bullet there. You
Yeah.
know?
What did you do okay, let me back up and have another question. Did you make some friends while in basic training? Is there anybody you might have
I
kept
did
in touch
not.
with?
You know, I remember people from basic training. I even remember people that I spent time in Europe with, but I have no earthly idea what happened to them, where they are, or how to find them. So
What did you do in Europe?
it took us 8 days to get over there in a troop ship. There was, I'll just put it bluntly, there was puke everywhere.
I
For
have
8
heard that.
days, everybody was sick. They had beds that that were 6 tall, and if you got in one down here, you had to get out of the bed to turn over. And you could only sleep on your back or your stomach because your side was too wide. There was somebody right above you.
Wow.
And so it was almost when you got in, the person's top was here touching your nose almost. And nobody took a shower. It stunk. They had, if you went to the mess hall, they had big tables with edges on them all the way around to keep the plates from sliding off. When the ship would go one way or the other, you'd have to grab everything, you know, you're over here. When you come back level, you drink or eat, and then whenever you go the other way, you grab your stuff to keep it from sliding, because there were metal tables.
And I was going to say, I'm sure nobody really said, now, while you take this little trip overseas, you might be getting a little bit sick. Nobody said a word.
Oh, no.
In other words, just get on the boat and let's
We didn't
go.
know how we were going. We just got on the boat, and, yeah.
Okay. So you got off that awful boat and learned how to eat and
8
drink again.
days, went to Germany. I had a man ask, does anybody here know how to type? And of course I've been drilled that you don't volunteer for anything in service, but I was not very bright, so I raised my hand. So me and 5 or 6 other dummies
Raise your hands.
were taken off to the side, and they had a little room with typewriters in them, and mine was on a table that came up about to my face level, so I was typing like this. And the table was not steady, so it was moving around. And they gave us a typing test. And I don't know how I did, but evidently it was good enough. The guy come told me, he said, we'd like for you to come to Third Admin Company. And he tried to make it sound like a terrible place. You know, he said, we work long hours and we do this, yada, yada, yada. And I was smart enough to know that an admin company is better than being out in the field with the infantry.
Right.
So I said, yeah, I'll go, give it a try. And so I did, and it was one of the smartest decisions I ever made.
Why is that?
It was, well, we had it made. We didn't even wear uniforms. We kept people's records, and that included the generals. And we could do anything we wanted to those records, and they knew it. And
Really?
so they treated us like really important people.
Wow.
The other thing I found out when I was in the service is that there is just tons of graft and corruption going on. There's, loans. You give me $100 and I'll give you $200 tomorrow when we get paid. It just everywhere you go, you had to pay for whatever you wanted, and so you could be in the service and still make lots of money, even though my monthly check was $90, I think.
$90. I'm just wondering, when you got home, did you ever run across anybody that said, well, you had it easy, you didn't do the hard stuff? I mean, did that come up?
I never did, no. Nobody really ever asked me very much about my experience in the service.
So how were you, what was your rank? How were you listed, your rank?
I got out as an E8.
Okay, that's a good thing.
It is, and it's impossible, but I did. If you work in the admin company, you can do a lot of stuff that other people can't.
Right.
So I was an E4, a Spec 4, that's possible for somebody who stays in the deal. You can make it up to a Spec 4 somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I was there for 2 years, and then I actually sent a letter to Jack Phelps and
From
told
Blanco.
him if they would let people out early for seasonal employment. And so I got Jack to write a letter saying that he needed somebody to work seasonally in the summertime. And so I got a 3-month early out of the service. And right before and they flew us back instead of on a ship.
I bet that was a
Which
whole
great.
lot better.
8 hours flight instead of 8 days. And so right before I left over there, I gave myself a raise. I made myself an E8. What you can do if you're the clerk, you can do anything. You can get rid of a general if you want to.
So it's kind of like there's a whole different
There's
view of
things
everything.
going on there that people got no clue. I mean, if you're in the service, you're aware of them.
Yeah.
You know what's going on, and you know what you have to do to...
Do you think of yourself as a veteran?
I think of myself as a veteran, but I obviously was never in combat. So, for me, Veterans Day is for those folks that actually fought in combat.
Did your mom and dad worry about you?
I'm sure Mother did. I'm sure Pop did. It just Pop wouldn't show it.
Yeah.
But Mother, I'd say, yeah, she probably did. I think they were both relieved when they found out I didn't go to Vietnam, which one of my brothers did. He went to Vietnam and stepped on a Claymore mine went off, and he's got shrapnel from his waist down all in his body. So we did have somebody in our family that did combat.
Did he ever talk about it much?
He didn't talk about it hardly at all, and that kind of, to me, that's kind of standard SOP for people. They don't like to talk about stuff like that. But he became, he opened up a little bit now that he's got a little older. I think you get to where you want people to know what happened.
Yeah.
Younger grow, you don't want to have to
got you now home? Mr.
Okay.
Phelps has said I could use some help. And once you got home, what were you doing for Mr. Phelps?
Construction, home construction, I guess.
Really?
Yeah.
You've just got like a whole realm of things that you've done.
Yes, oh yeah, I think that was pretty typical of somebody my age. You know, we used to work during the 3-month period in between school,
Uh-huh.
and then college, the same thing. You have to work to go to college. So
What I want to
did
say-
a lot of different jobs.
When you were at that age, what's one of your best memories of Blanco? Can you tell me what Blanco was like and one of your best memories?
I don't know if I could come up with a best memory. I do know that the city of Blanco was kind of a magnet for kids. And to me, you know, you're a kid until you either get married or you turn 30, something like that.
Yeah. I like the way you described it, that the city was a magnet.
It was a magnet. That's where we all went. And I'm not even sure why we went there, but we did.
Uh-huh.
And we'd drive up and down the streets. Luckily at that time, you know, gasoline was 19 cents a gallon.
Wow.
And so, and in my case at least, I drove my family's car. I didn't have a car.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a gas card from my daddy. I had the car that Pop was paying everything on. So it didn't cost me nothing. So I could stay out all night, sleep all day. And that went on for a while. And Pop took me aside one time and said, you're going to have to go get a job, which was, this was right after I got out of the service. And I just wanted to do nothing. And he told me, you're going to have to go get a job. And I thought, oh, yeah, that doesn't sound good.
That was not up your alley at the moment.
Yeah, it wasn't. But again, I got lucky again. My Aunt Lois, who used to call me Little Willie John.
Why is that, Willie
I
John?
got no clue why. Well, John was Willard John Gibbons is my name.
Well, that makes sense
So
then.
she called me Little Willie John. She knew that I was looking for a job that Pop told me I had to get, and so she talked to Sam Pflugrath, who lives up the river here from us,
Uh-huh.
and he said, well, we're looking for a person to go to work for the USGS, United States Geological Survey.
Okay.
And so he took me down on a Friday night to meet the boss. We went to the boss's house. The boss interviewed me and told me to show up for work the next Monday, which I did.
Wow. And where did you work? Where were you working at?
This was in Austin.
In Austin, Texas.
So
Okay.
I moved to Austin and went to work for the U.S. Geological Survey. I had a 56 Chevrolet car. The first day that I was there, I couldn't find a parking place, so I parked it. Went to work. 5:30, we left. I went out. My car's gone.
Uh-oh.
So my car got stolen the first day.
No.
Yes. And they found it about 2 or 3 weeks later. But it was kind of a bad start for my job.
Yeah,
Man,
I
if
think
things are going to
so.
go like this ain't going to be good.
So you have to call home and say,
I actually walked out to North Austin to my girlfriend's house. I didn't have enough money to make a call. I didn't have any money at all. And so I walked out there, and she took me to work. And they eventually found my car parked somewhere, but it had 4 flats, and battery was gone, and that type of stuff. But I got it back running again, and moved on. And you know, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, was getting a government job. Pop worked for years building houses like I was doing. And then he got a job at Randolph Air Force Base. It was a blue-collar job. The job I got is white-collar, which is a difference in pay scale, essentially. And he told me, he said, if you can ever get on with the government, you got it made. If you worked here in Blanco, you worked for a period of time, a month or so, for a contractor or something. And whenever y'all finished that job, sometimes you'd have to wait a month or two.
For work.
For work. And if you got sick or something, you stayed home, you didn't get paid. And a government job, all that's taken care of. You've got sick leave, you've got annual leave, you've got a job there every day, you know. So it was, he said, that's wonderful. So he was looking at his experience as a small town person who did construction. It's never a steady job. It's always have off time. Whereas with a government job, you get a check coming in every 2 weeks or however often they pay you. And so I remember him telling me that, and I thought, well, I'm going to try a government job then and see what happens. And it turned out to be a great experience for me.
Because you retired.
I retired from that 34 years I worked for and retired, yeah.
Did you enjoy that type of work?
I did. It was, when I initially started out, the USGS, I was in the water quality section, which means we collected and analyzed water all around the state of Texas. And it was very interesting to collect water and then to go back to the lab and and analyze it and see what's in that water.
Did you test Blanco?
I did not. And as far as I know, I did test a couple of wells around here, but that was not officially. I did it just
for the people.
Good. And I tested my well to see what it did. But we didn't test any water out here. But we did a lot of others. The USGS is they do a lot of work for cities, municipalities, for organizations, hire them to do things. And they do a cooperative type thing. The cooperator will put up half the money and the government will put up the other half. And so they can get stuff done really cheaply.
I bet.
And so they're an organization that's, at least in the scientific area, they're pretty well known. And a lot of people use their data for a lot of stuff. And so,
well, now I want to try to figure out, and when you and I first talked, the only time that when I've seen you at different gatherings, all I kind of see is you taking photos.
That's the way I prefer to be.
We're sitting here with this amazing photo of a most beautiful rainbow, and now I've got to find out what made you become the man behind the lens.
I had always played around with photos, and that was mostly with Adobe Photoshop. I didn't even own a camera, but I'd get other people's pictures and do things to them. I'd cut one person's head off and put it on another person, that type of thing. And people seem to enjoy that, so I enjoy doing it. Everybody likes for somebody to appreciate what they do. And so if you create something and people like it, that's the ultimate payoff.
You take a lot of photos of Blanco.
Yes.
And how are you able to take such beautiful photos here in
I don't know. I think for the most part you have to have some passion, and I think that it really, really helps if you have some good tools to do your job. My analogy is you can change spark plugs with a crescent wrench, but it's going to take you a while. If you've got a spark plug wrench, you can do it real quick. And it's the same way with any job. If you have the right tools, the job becomes easier.
So, like I was going to say, when you retired, did you kind of just automatically fall into starting to take photos?
I did not. When I retired, I was going to play golf every day and, do other things. I really didn't think anything about photography. My cousin found something down here in the river. And first off, I played golf every day for a year and figured out that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah, got a little bit, yeah, good.
It got really bored. So my cousin one day found something that somebody had done down here in the river. They'd made an ark with just rocks stacked them up. And they said, it'd be nice if we had a picture of that. So I said, oh, I'm going to go buy a camera and we'll take a picture. So I did. And that was the beginning. I started taking pictures of this. And it was a middle of the road camera. It wasn't the cheapest and it wasn't the most expensive. So it did pretty good, but it wasn't the best if you were going to be a professional. And so from there, I've kind of gone up as far as my equipment's concerned. As you know, experience, I don't think there's anything better than experience on the job.
On the job training.
Started building up experience with all the years that I've been doing this, and so I think I've been better and better at doing it, and I think that's just normal for anybody that worked at something for a long time. They're going to get better at it eventually.
Well, what I hear from people is that Willard has a way of tweaking a photo.
Yes.
And so tell me how you think you tweak a photo.
Every photo that anybody in the world takes that's done digitally has been tweaked. They tweak it in the camera before it even comes out. If you just print whatever the sensor in your camera sees, it's going to be gibberish. And so every camera maker has some program that they run this thing through, and it turns it into a color photo. And you can even tell that they do things whenever they give you a little knob that lets you select what type of picture you're going to take. If it's going to be a nighttime picture, if it's going to be a photograph of a panoramic type picture, or if it's going to be a portrait. And each one of those things adjusts what's on that sensor. And so it will output a different photo, different looking. If you put them all side by side, they'll be different looking. And essentially what I do is take a photo with that's as bland as possible. I don't want the camera to do anything. And then I put it on a computer and I fix it like I want it. And there is some art to that as far as the final product. If you look at the original picture and the picture that I finished product, they're going to look drastically different. And I think the one that I worked on looks better. Some people will argue that, but I don't care.
That's right.
I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah.
So,
have you had anybody say, it's just about the worst thing I've ever seen in a photo? Has anyone ever said that to you?
Not to my memory and not to my face. There may be people that say that.
I don't think so from what I've heard.
I have had people that didn't like certain pictures I've taken of them, but I think it wasn't because the picture was bad. I think it's because they weren't grinning or they had one eye closed or something like that. So.
One thing that I've noticed that you do, if you get onto Facebook from time to time, you take a lot of these black and white school photographs where the kids are in their high school. It's like an annual.
Yes.
And it's kind of like you're putting it out there and saying, can you figure out who so-and-so is in row 2? What got you into doing that? That
stack of annuals over there, I started going through them one day, and I noticed that I could get pictures from the first grade through the 12th.
Right.
And so the picture of the kid in the first grade versus the picture of the kid in the 12th grade was dramatically different. So I thought it would be nice to have a sequence of this same person from first grade to the 12th grade. And so I started scanning them. I've got a bunch of scanners that I use, and it's very easy to scan. So I started scanning them, and I would pick out 2 or 3 people, and as I'd go through each annual, I'd try to get pictures of all 3 of those. So
right.
There'd be several pages in the annual that I do that. And I did a couple of them, and I actually had some people request that I do them. And I got a fairly decent response from people, and especially people that knew the folks that I did. What I was kind of surprised at is the actual people that I did. I got very few, if any, comments at all from them on their pictures.
But it was from others that
They commented on some others. But
yeah.
I don't recall anybody commenting on their own selves.
Is there a favorite spot that you like to take a picture here in Blanco that stands out the most to you?
If I had to pick a favorite spot, it'd probably be the park.
Why is that?
Because of the scenes that are available in the park. You've got such a mixture of things in the park, water, trees, buildings, stuff that's there. You don't have to try to create anything.
I was going to say, I'm thinking as you're headed down to the river, let's say, to take a photograph or into the park, you pretty much already have a thought in your head as to what you're looking for. Is that true?
That's not true.
Not true.
No.
So you wait for the image to come to you.
Yeah. Most of my stuff that let's say I go to the park and I walk through the park and I'll take tons of pictures while I'm doing that. And I may even take, 20 or 30 shots of the same scene from different spots and different, zoomed in and zoomed out, all kinds of stuff like that. And then I come and load them onto the computer and I go through and look at them. And then I'll pick out one of those that I like and I'll work on it, and that might be the thing I put on Facebook.
Really?
The rest of them, I've got them, but, they're just on the computer.
Now, as I understand it, you are able to do your own, you print your photos here?
Yes, I've got a printer. I can print, I can frame, I can do pretty much anything related to photography. If I do it for somebody, I have to charge more than what, they can find it cheaper, let me put it that way. It costs me more to do stuff than it does big printer offices.
How long did it take you to get all of your equipment together?
A pretty long time. I continually buy equipment and upgrade to newer equipment. So, I'd say it probably, it took a while before I even built this. Originally, I was going down to the square at Renee Benson's place, their framing shop,
right.
Essentially, Larry Fair. And me and him were kind of partners.
Yeah.
And it was very small, crowded, dirty. If you've ever framed anything, if you get dirt underneath the glass, you got to undo everything, get that speck of dirt off, reframe it. And I thought, I can't do this. I got to have a nice, clean area to work in.
So you have on your average day, is it pretty much to where you're constantly out here working on something? I mean, do you ever get ahead of your photographs, or are you having to, how does your flow go on that?
If I don't have a job or something that somebody's paying for,
right,
or a project, I could actually go back and just review. And I told you I took 20 or 25 pictures of one object and pulled one out of that. Well, I've got 24 pictures still there, and so I can go back and review those pictures and say, oh, that one looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And pull that one out and work on it. So during my off period, I'm usually doing something like that. I'm reviewing old photographs that I've taken that when I first looked at them, I didn't think they warranted any extra work. And I already had one out of that object, so I can do it.
When did you start selling your work?
Pretty much from the very start. I offered it for sale. I didn't sell a whole lot, but I still don't sell a whole lot. I probably paid jobs where somebody pays me to do birthdays or corporate type thing. So,
But now, I think you said too, recently with the photographs of what, you started taking some of the river?
yeah.
And you got a lot of interest in that.
Yes, you know, most of the folks that I sell to are obviously probably going to be around Blanco.
Yeah, Blanco people.
And so if they prefer something that's a picture of Blanco
Yeah.
or something. And if it's something that's unusual about Blanco, in other words, it's not there all the time, like fall pictures and spring and that type of stuff, it sells better.
Could you see yourself doing anything differently than what you're doing in the photography?
In photography, no. If I had started doing this when I was 25, it would be a lot different.
How do you mean?
I would have to either hire somebody to do promotional work, or I'd have to do it myself. And if I'm just starting out, I'd probably have to do it myself. So I would have to be visiting stores and whatever all around, trying to get them to display my stuff and sell my stuff, of which I don't do any of that. I don't do any type of promotional.
Well, I think it's kind of a true statement in the short time that I've come to know you, that your work speaks for itself. It doesn't really seem to need a voice.
I would hope that it would.
It does. It does.
And that's, again, I mentioned Larry Fair before, but he's the person that told me. He said, you have to like your work. If you don't like, if you're an artist and you don't like what you did, people can tell that you don't.
I agree with that. I do.
And so I pretty much like everything that I put out. If I don't like it, I probably still have it, but it's on the computer.
I want to ask you about growing up a little bit with your siblings. As you said, you're all adopted
Yes,
from different backgrounds.
yes.
As you all grew up together, how did that seem to, did they ever talk about the fact of the adoption, or everybody just kind of knew this is the way it is?
You know, the adopted issue that stands out in my mind was, it was before we adopted my two brothers and sisters. I went to the first grade, and I had a kid named Jimmy Ponish, the Ponish family. He told me that I wasn't really my mother and daddy's kid, which I didn't know that at the time. Blood kid.
Right.
And so I got in a big fight with him.
Did you take him outside?
We were outside when he
That's good.
recess. I don't think either one of us won, and the teacher got us separated. And so that was pretty dramatic for me when I went home and asked Mother. I didn't ask her, I told her what he said.
How'd she react?
She said, he is right, you are our adopted kid. And so I would have preferred to have been told that by them earlier. My two brothers and sisters were adopted. They were already in school, so they remembered their
Birth parents.
And they know that they were adopted, so it was kind of different with them. But if there's one thing I could suggest to anybody that adopts a kid at birth or something, to be sure when they get old enough to kind of understand, is to be sure to tell them.
Do you feel like that changed your relationship with your parents?
No, I don't think so. Just one of those bumps in the road, I think.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it didn't
think
change anything. But
did it change you?
the only thing that changed was my relationship with Jimmy Ponish.
Yeah, I have a feeling that made a difference.
Me and him never did get along after that. And
Did he ever say anything to you after that?
No.
I think you understood why he shouldn't probably.
But it really didn't affect anything. It was just, I don't know, I just felt like it would have been better if they would have told me themselves.
Did any of your siblings or you ever have the desire to search? Well, you said that you said they knew their birth parents.
Yes, they knew them, and they went back and visited with them, that type of stuff. I never had a desire to do that, and I think maybe because I was adopted at birth, so I never knew my mother or father. And so, you know, if you've lived long enough to have memories of your parents and then get adopted, I think that's different.
Right, yeah.
And so I understand why they would do it. But I never have. Actually, I know the name of, I have the adoption papers, and I know the name of the lady that was my mother, but I'm not really interested in pursuing that.
How often are you called to do a job, to take photographs?
Maybe once or twice a week, something like that.
Wow,
Not
you stay
really.
busy.
I do.
That's good.
And it's not like I work 8 hours a day every day, but it's all I want. I may be giving a secret away here, but when I first started, I had a website, and the business was so good that I spent virtually every day over here at this printer. Some of these things take 30 minutes to print. Now, I'm not doing anything during that 30 minutes, but I have to be here when it ends and pull the paper out and cut it off and do another one. So I was spending all my time printing and not much time out taking pictures.
Right.
But I don't like to print. And so I went back up on my website and I added a 0 to the price on all of the pictures. So if one of them was $8, it's
That's
now
good.
800.
That's good.
And the orders dropped off a cliff. But what was funny was the few orders that I got, I made about as much money as I did when I was printing all
The other
day.
way. Do you have a favorite story of Blanco as we're getting ready to wind down? Is there a favorite memory of Blanco that hits you, for you?
You know, I just have to say probably my whole youth.
Good.
And this would be any time between the time I was born and graduated high school. That whole period was probably couldn't have been any better.
This is my favorite question to ask. How do you see Blanco in 5 years?
You know, I don't see Blanco much different. I know there are people that do, but I don't really see. I see Blanco changing gradually. If you look, whenever I went to high school, there were 660 people here. That's been a good while ago. There is now 1,500 people here. So it's a little more than double, but it wasn't overnight. That's many years. Now, I think that will accelerate, but I don't think it's going to change anything overnight or over a year or over 2 years or 5 years. I think it's going to be, again, a real gradual change. At some point in time, though, that slope of that curve, as far as change is concerned, is going to go straight up.
Would you
But it ain't going to be while I'm alive.
I think you're kind of young, Willard.
Wish I was.
Would you have preferred your life to be any different?
No, I wouldn't.
Good.
I wouldn't trade with anybody.
Hallelujah.